Hello and welcome, my name is Matt Ashby and I'm going to be giving an honest review on the RETO 3D film camera. Okay, so what is the RETO 3D film camera? Well, with the three lenses, it allows you to take three pictures simultaneously. Now by doing this, you can animate them and you can give it a matrix freeze frame style effect. It's got quite popular recently. It's been used in a fair amount of music videos. I know Masa definitely used some 3D photography in his, as well as I think ASAP Rocky as well. So this is actually a modern day version of a Nimslo or a Nikisha camera. So these cameras were made in the 1980s, but have unfortunately been discontinued. So essentially, since the rise in popularity of using 3D photography, they've been sought after quite a lot, but obviously as they've stopped making them, their prices have skyrocketed. I think RETO have kind of seen a gap in the market and decided to make a product that kind of fills that demand. And yeah, so you can pick it up for around, I think I paid 100 to 110 pounds. That was including some film, so a roll or two of film as well. So I think that's around $130. That was straight from the RETO website. It did take 2 months to arrive, and that's because it's been shipped directly from China and I'm living in the UK, so it may vary depending on whereabouts in the world you are, but just bear that in mind that it is coming from China and it probably will take quite some time. On top of that, because I live in the UK, it cost me I think around £15 in import tax, which is obviously something you have to pay to get the product. So yeah, to actually get it to my door, I think it probably cost me around 120, 130 pounds, which moves me straight away onto the main disadvantage of the camera in its price point in comparison to its build quality. It comes in a very nice, I'd say Apple looking box, really sleek design and just really well made. And after opening it, it is slightly underwhelming when you bring it out of the box and you feel that it's basically completely plastic. It does look really nice. I think the design is, they've definitely gone for an aesthetic which is kind of copying the Nimslo and, give it a retro kind of look. And I think they've definitely done that well. However, the actual build quality it does feel a little bit cheap and a little bit plasticky in your hand. You can definitely tell it didn't cost £100 to manufacture. And I do kind of wish they'd put a bit more money in the product itself than the packaging it came in. Now, I actually own two RETO cameras because actually the first one they sent me was broken. Straight out of the box, it had a bit of a rattly shake kind of sound to it, and after using it a couple of times you could just tell that the pictures were ruined, they wouldn't come out properly. This was obviously quite disappointing when I waited 2 months for it, but after filling out the returns form and whatnot, it actually surprisingly only took about 2 weeks to get another one sent out, which is quite strange because the first one took 2 months and the replacement took 2 weeks, but I've now got a working one. I've had this camera for about 5 or 6 months now. I personally think it is a lot of fun to use. I don't know anyone else that has a 3D camera. It's such a niche area of photography that people it's not really accessible to everyone. Like I said, I don't personally know anyone that has one of these cameras, so it definitely makes your work stand out amongst the crowd. This is probably partially because of the price point, and it's definitely at the beginning of its trend of use. But I know that when I first bought it, I didn't know anyone else that has a 3D camera. And still to this day, I really don't know many people that have taken pictures like this, apart from people I follow on Instagram. So I definitely think that it is a really cool niche kind of area of photography, which does allow you to be quite creative and experimental. However, it does come at quite a price point. A main advantage and a plus of the RETO 3D in comparison to its predecessors, Nimslo and Nikisha, is that it has a built-in flash. The older models, you had to buy a separate flash that would attach on top of the camera. This is just, extra money. I think they retail for around 150 pounds or dollars, whatever. So if you're looking for a Nimslo camera with a flash instead of the RETO, you're gonna be spending quite a lot of money. Now, having said that, the flash takes a AA battery that goes in the bottom, and I don't think I've ever had to replace that, maybe once in 6 months I've owned it. So that works really well. However, because the flash is situated to one side and it's not in line with the lenses, it does actually make the left frame or the left image, depending on the scenario, brighter than the right image. So when you're processing the image and making it animated in Photoshop or Premiere or any sort of software, you do have to do a little bit of photo manipulation to make all the pictures the same brightness. Otherwise, it does have a kind of flashing effect. This isn't all the time, but so it's something to bear in mind that you kind of have to know your way around Photoshop or the Adobe kind of suite to really be getting some high quality images from the camera. Because of the way the camera technology works inside, it uses up 1.5 exposures of film per picture. So when you're buying a roll of 36 exposures of film, for example, you're actually only getting 24 3D pictures. So just bear that in mind if you're planning on doing a photo shoot or something like that with a really specific amount of pictures taken, because 36 exposures is not 36 pictures. Each time you press the shutter, you are using 1.5 exposures. Because of that, the viewfinder and the pictures actually come out portrait. This is kind of done to maximize the amount of pictures you can take on a roll of film. I think it's basically the only way the technology can work. It's kind of an advantage over the Nimslo or the Nikisha. They have 4 lenses. That means they use 2 exposures of film every time they take a picture. So you are saving a bit of money on film when using the RETO instead. Because of the build quality of the camera, I would say that about 75% of the pictures I take come out looking good and usable. Because it has the kind of feel of a disposable camera, I don't think the actual inner workings of the camera are as fine-tuned as they could be. I do sometimes find that the frames aren't perfectly lined, and you do kind of have to do a fair bit, like I said, of photo manipulation. I sometimes have to crop the images to make the animation work properly and not look too jolty. Yeah, there's a fair bit of work that goes into the animation process afterwards to make them look as good as they possibly can. Being someone that mainly uses digital cameras, I'm quite used to just finishing filming or taking a picture, take the SD card out, and it doesn't cost me a penny just to chuck it into the computer and yeah, just use it, get editing. Although you're saving money on buying a RETO instead of an original Nimslo or Nikisha, you've got to remember £100 is not the only cost it's going to be to use the camera. Now, I did some maths, and adding up the cost of the film plus the development, it normally costs me around 85 to 95p per 3D picture. And it is by far the most expensive to use bit of equipment that I have. And I think over the 6 months that I've owned it, I've probably spent at least the price of the camera in film development. Now, obviously, I understand this is just a regular thing in the world of film photography. I think that's just to bear it in mind that if you are wanting to go down this experimental photography route, it is going to cost you a fair bit of money. So when it comes to animating the pictures, there's several different methods you can go down. I personally use Premiere Pro to animate the pictures after they've been digitized from the photo developer. Now, that's just because I know how to use Premiere and I'm comfortable using that software. However, I do understand that a fair amount of people that will be looking to buy this might not have the knowledge of Adobe Suite and whatnot. They do have an app on the Apple App Store, and you can just import the pictures and it will animate it for you. And I think it is quite easy to use. However, it does come at a cost of, I think, £4 or £5. Obviously, I understand they've got to make their money, but I just feel that's a little bit cheeky after you've already spent the money on the camera. So although I've been saying that the build quality isn't as good as it could be, I do think, like I said earlier, the design is actually really well thought out, and it does have a good, retro kind of aesthetic to it. Now, I think this is one of those things that if you get bored of it and you decide you're not going to use it anymore, that it is something that could, quite nicely sit on a shelf or sit in like a display cabinet. It definitely has like an interesting kind of look to it and can just, serve for display purposes. Overall, I would say that the RETO 3D is a lot of fun to use, and I definitely don't regret buying one. However, over time, I've started to realize, the cost of using it, as well as it's quite difficult to use it in a professional sense, as the build quality, along with many other factors, makes it quite hard to predict how the picture's going to turn out. So I think that it's absolutely great for personal use. If you're already doing a video project and you want to add something extra to it using some 3D pictures, I think that's great. However, I think if you're going to solely be, doing some work around 3D photography or around this sort of niche photography market, I think you might be better off searching and spending out a little bit of extra money trying to find an original Nimslo or Nikisha. I know apps like TikTok now are also trying to digitally replicate the effect by just using one picture. And I think personally, you can tell a mile off that it's not a real 3D picture. However, I can say the same thing that I don't think the RETO 3D pictures are as good as the original Nimslo or Nikisha. So it's definitely a good middle ground. And I think that, the company at RETO definitely did a good job in seeing a gap in the market and filling it quite well. And with the price point it's currently at, I don't think that I'll be telling everyone to rush out and go and buy it. I personally have had a lot of fun shooting with it, and I will probably continue to use it a little bit in the future as well. However, not being part of the film photography world, I struggle to spend the money on the actual pictures and getting them developed, etc. So I think if you are an enthusiastic film photographer and you want something, you know, try something new, something quite experimental, then I think it definitely could be the thing for you, especially if you're not looking to spend £200–300 on a Nimslo camera. Let me know if this has influenced your decision on buying one at all, if you have a RETO 3D and you agree or disagree with what I say, and if you have any questions or comments about using a 3D camera or the animation process or anything like that, please drop it down below in the comment section. And if you've learned anything from this video, maybe consider subscribing. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.